Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine a massive corporate fight. We're talking multi-billion dollars, but it's not over, the latest AI or some pharma giant. This huge battle is over. A convenience store.
Yeah, 7-Eleven specifically.
Exactly, 7-Eleven. You sent over some really, really fascinating sources on this, and well, our mission today is basically to unpack it. Why is there this billion-dollar struggle to own 7-Eleven? What's really at stake here? And maybe what does it all tell us about where convenience stores are heading, globally?
It's quite something.
So we're going to get into the history, which is kind of surprising. This really stark difference between how it works in Japan versus, well, elsewhere. And then there's this huge bid aiming to create a sort of global convenience empire.
What really jumps out, I think, from the sources you shared is how a brand that most of us, especially maybe in North America, think we know how it operates and just how it's perceived so differently in Japan. It's almost night and day.
Totally. And the backstory is pretty unexpected, too. Like, 7-Eleven didn't start in Japan.
No, not at all.
It actually kicked off way back in 1927, an ice vendor in Dallas, Texas.
An ice house, yeah. Selling blocks of ice.
Right. And then slowly they started adding essentials, bread, milk, eggs, morphing into more of a general store.
And then comes the big pivot. This Japanese retailer, Ito-Yokado, they've got their own long history, almost a century old. They spotted 7-Eleven in the U.S. back in the 70s. They saw something there, brought the concept to Japan.
And fast forward to 2005, they didn't just license it anymore, they bought the whole thing.
Yep, full ownership. Folded it into their big holding company, 7&I Holdings.
And look at it now. 7-Eleven isn't just a player. It's literally the world's biggest retail chain, if you count stores.
The numbers are staggering.
Aren't they? 85,000 locations across the globe. Put that next to Starbucks and McDonald's.
More than both combined.
Exactly. And get this, 62 million people walk through their doors every day.
62 million daily.
That's like the entire population of California and New York State combined, visiting a 7-Eleven each day. That's wild.
And they're not stopping. The sources mention they want to grow from, 20 countries now to 30 by 2030? Big ambitions.
But here's the kicker. The thing your sources really drive home.
Yeah.
About 1 out of every 4 of those 85,000 stores, they're in Japan.
Right. Roughly 21,000 stores packed into Japan.
And that's where, according to pretty much everyone looking at this, the 7-Eleven concept has reached this almost mythical level of perfection.
Uh-huh. The Japanese 7-Eleven experience is just different. It's not just grabbing a Slurpee and a bag of chips. You can pay your utility bills, mail a package, use an ATM, pick up tickets for concerts.
All sorts of daily life stuff.
Exactly. But the food, that seems to be the real standout. People consistently describe it as surprisingly delicious, super fresh, high quality, but still, affordable.
Gourmet convenience. That's the term that keeps popping up.
That's the one.
And it's not just luck, is it? This quality, this freshness. It's built on an incredibly complex, very tightly integrated system. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. A huge part is their supply chain, their logistics. It's based on this model called Tenpin Kanri.
Tenpin Kanri.
Yeah.
That's the item-by-item management system, right? Known for being super precise.
Exactly. Famously efficient. It's actually been studied at places like Harvard Business School. A lot of it's automated, using back-end data to know precisely what each individual store needs, down to the item level. Products get picked up from these dedicated distribution centers, sometimes multiple times a day, to keep things fresh.
Okay, multiple times a day makes sense for freshness, but this next part, this is what blew my mind reading the sources.
The factories.
Yes, they operate over 150 factories across Japan, dedicated solely to making products for 7-Eleven stores, delivering fresh stuff every single day.
150. It's an incredible commitment to vertical integration for freshness and specific product development.
It just clicks, doesn't it? Why trying to replicate that exact level of, quality and daily freshness is so incredibly difficult in other places, like the U.S., for instance?
Absolutely. The geography alone is a massive hurdle. The U.S. is vast. Stores are often less densely clustered than in Japan, so maintaining that ultra-fresh, multi-delivery system built around custom-made products, exponentially harder and more expensive.
And you see it directly in what people buy, right? The sources pointed out that in U.S. 7-Elevens, processed foods make up something like 47% of sales.
Almost half, yeah.
Which is nearly double the figure in Japan, where it's much more about hot prepared meals, fresh sandwiches, onigiri, that kind of thing.
It leads to this really fundamental question. If that Japanese magic, the fresh food, the gourmet convenience, is so tied to that very specific logistical setup, how on earth do you export that successfully to markets
Yeah.
with different geographies, different infrastructure, different consumer expectations?
And different competition too, right? In the US, they're not just competing with other C-stores, but also fast food places, grocery stores offering quick options.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Definitely a tougher landscape in many ways.
Plus, the whole economic climate. People feeling squeezed might cut back on impulse buys at convenience stores, maybe going to dollar stores, or buying in bulk instead. That adds pressure.
And unfortunately, yeah, that mix of factors seems to have hit 7-Eleven's performance, particularly in the US market, according to the materials, which is a major headache for the parent company, 7 & I, because North America is, or at least was, generating around half their total operating profit.
So you can see why there'd be pressure on 7 & I, the
Yeah.
parent company, to sort of fix things,
Yeah.
improve performance outside Japan.
Mm-hmm. They've definitely been trying, upgrading U.S. stores, changing the product mix, trying to emphasize food quality more, working on the supply chain.
They've also tried expanding elsewhere, like Europe, but it seems kind of hit or miss.
And that really gets to the core challenge highlighted in your sources for building this unified global empire they seem to want. The 7-Eleven you experience can feel like a totally different store, a different brand, depending on what country you're in.
Yeah, that inconsistency, the experience isn't standard. And it seems like that comes down to how the stores are actually run day to day across the world.
Right. 7 & I doesn't operate everything the same way globally. They use a mix. Sometimes they own and operate the stores directly. That's one model.
Okay.
Then there's traditional franchising, where, individuals or smaller companies buy the rights for a specific store or a small area.
A classic franchise model.
Exactly. And then there's a third way, licensing, where a big company buys the master rights to operate all the 7-Elevens across an entire country or a large region.
Ah, okay. So you've got direct ownership, local franchises, and these big regional licensees.
Precisely. And this patchwork approach, where different people with potentially different priorities are controlling the operations, makes it incredibly tough to guarantee that consistent, high-quality, maybe gourmet convenience feel everywhere.
And that specific problem, the inconsistency, tied to the performance struggles in key markets like the U.S., that's what's created the opening, right?
Yeah.
For this massive potential takeover.
It seems so, because now you have this major Quebec-based player, Alimentation Couche-Tard.
The company that owns Circle K.
That's them. They've apparently made a significant bid to acquire the whole parent company, 7 & I Holdings in Japan, the owner of Global 7-Eleven.
Wow. So Couche-Tard looks at 7 & I and sees what? Just the store count?
More than that, I think. They likely see that huge network, yes, but also, according to your sources, they see this potential treasure trove of operational know-how, especially from Japan. Their goal seems to be invest in that Japanese excellence, figure out how to deploy it more effectively across the entire global network, and really cement 7-Eleven as the undisputed world leader.
So take the best bits from Japan, combine it with their own experience in global retail standardization and efficiency.
That seems to be the pitch. They think they can bring scale and operational discipline.
If this deal actually happened, the implications would be huge, wouldn't they? Way beyond just which logo is on your corner store.
Oh, absolutely enormous. Historically, it could be the largest foreign takeover of a Japanese company ever.
The biggest ever.
Potentially, yes. And remember, even though 7-Eleven started in the US, it's become so deeply woven into the fabric of daily life in Japan. It's not just a store, it's almost a social utility.
Right, paying bills, sending packages.
Exactly. So a foreign company taking it over, that could face real resistance, not just from a corporate perspective, but maybe even emotionally, culturally.
Which loops back to that idea we touched on, the one in your sources about certain retail experiences, just feeling special, almost magical, like that feeling people describe walking into a Japanese 7-Eleven, the discovery, the quality, the efficiency.
And that feeling, that perceived magic, is really what this whole battle boils down to, isn't it? Whether it's 7-I's current investors pushing them to finally export that Japanese success effectively, or Couche-Tard believing they are the ones who can harness it, scale it, and build that truly dominant, consistent global brand out of it.
So let's pull this together for you, the listener. This whole fight over 7-Eleven, it really throws a spotlight on just how challenging it is to take something incredibly successful and culturally specific, like that sophisticated gourmet convenience model from Japan, and make it work just as well, just as consistently, everywhere else.
Yeah, the different operating models around the world have clearly led to uneven experiences. And this bid from Couche-Tard, It's not just about adding stores. It could genuinely be the biggest foreign acquisition of a Japanese firm in history, potentially reshaping the entire global convenience market by trying to capture that Japanese secret sauce.
So think about your own convenience store experiences. Have you noticed big differences, maybe even between two stores of the same brand, just in different locations?
What does this whole situation, this fight over 7-Eleven, suggest to you about global business, about how culture impacts commerce? And maybe what do we, as consumers, really want when we need something fast?
And maybe here's something to mull over after this. If that unique, almost magical feel of 7-Eleven in Japan really depends on things like Tampin Connery, those 150-plus dedicated factories making unique stuff daily, its role as a quasi-social service.
Yeah.
Is that super high standard of gourmet convenience actually something you can just replicate and scale up worldwide to create one giant uniform empire?
Or is some of that magic always going to be tied to the specific place, the specific culture, the specific infrastructure that created it in the first place?